Hey there, fellow stressors. Welcome to the Stress Mess Podcast. I'm Samantha Elizabeth, the founder and master coach at Samantha Elizabeth Coaching and Consulting. As a self-proclaimed stress mess, I've discovered the true gravity of stress and its sneaky influence on every aspect of our lives. A couple years ago, I had a health scare caused by too much stress, and after my doctor's orders to stop stressing, I went on a journey to uncover the secrets of stress management. Join me and my guests on this unfiltered journey from stress mess to stress less. In this episode of the Stress Mess Podcast, I talk to my voiceover guy, David Gilbert. David is hilarious. I had such a great time talking with him, and you're going to hear in this episode so many wonderful nuggets of wisdom from David as he was growing up in his life, and then also his gig work that he has for voiceover work. So enjoy this episode. Did you ever do radio? No. But you have a good radio voice. So you want to talk a little bit about kind of like what you do and the stress of it, I suppose. Let's talk about stress, right?
Whatever you want.
All right. I'll go. Yeah. You want to talk about kind of what you do and maybe a little bit about your stress?
Sure. I mean, I've had lots of stress in my life. It didn't happen just from work. So I've moved 4 times. Every 13 years I was moving. So when I was 13 years old, I moved from Winnipeg to Toronto. So that was interesting. Then I went from my grade 7 class when I was 13 was 10 kids to a large public junior high, middle school that I mean, different cultures and everything. It was a really big shock for me. Going from small town to a large city. Lost my wife when I was 39.
Oh,
17 years ago. So yeah, like I've had, I have 2 kids. They're now, 22 and 21, 23.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've had a lot of stress in my life. Jobs. It took me until I started down this voiceover journey in 2016. Actually, it was it was during the first year, so 2016. So by the summer, I think it was, or even the next year, 2017. One of my coaches, no, actually it was 2016. Never mind. One of the people I was getting my demo with, this gentleman in New Jersey. Before then, I didn't have to enunciate or speak clearly I didn't think consciously of it in my business life. I was in sales and marketing, consumer goods. And so I had a very lazy tongue. And so he recommended I go get coaching, vocal coaching with this woman, Denise, Denise Woods, wonderful woman. And the second session in, she goes, "David, do you have a lot of stress in your life?" I said, yeah, because I'll get to where I got into voiceover in a minute. I said, yeah. She says, well, whatever's going on here is coming out here.
Oh.
And so I thought, oh, well, I can't pick up a company's script for like a commercial or something and expect to get it out properly if I've got stuff going on here. So I knew I had to get get that taken care of. And that was a lot of, excess baggage over the years from mental health and bullying and whatnot. And so that I went down this mental health journey. And during that, I realized that my working career, I was a passenger on my bus. I was always I wasn't driving it.
Oh.
And think of like the feather in Forrest Gump. I was always being pushed with the wind. I was always leaving something, not going to something. I think back from when I graduated university, I was working with my dad in a home-based business at the time because he was laid off after 17 years at his company. And I think back now, go, why didn't I have a career path? Graduate university, go, I want to go into this field and build a career in whatever it is. Well,
Mhm.
I didn't have that. I didn't even think, because I was helping my dad for a year before I even graduated. And it wasn't until a year and a half, a year after I graduated, or even that fall, I think it was, that a fax came through the fax machine, which, if you're old enough, you know what a fax machine is, for a job in London, Ontario, for an assistant buyer position. And it happened to come through a headhunter who was one of my dad's old bosses. And met the general manager of the company, and he was one of my dad's old bosses. So I'm like, okay, well, it's good money, and I don't have anything keeping me in Toronto. London's about 2 hours southwest of Toronto. So I moved. I didn't like want to do that. It just sort of fell on my lap, and I'm like, okay, sure, why not? You know, and everything from that was always leaving as opposed to going to
Wow.
something, right? And so I've learned a lot about myself more in the last 7 years than I had in the previous, whatever, 35 years working.
Yeah,
Uh,
wow. You brought
yeah,
up a lot of things, about, moving and that big change and everything, especially in junior high. And I got to say that, that is a pivotal time of a lot of people's lives, especially, in like our traditional school systems and everything, if you're in that, that is a time obviously during puberty, and you had a big change in your life and everything. And so like, what kind of was that like, of making that big change, for you? You want to dive into that a little bit further?
sure. So I was bullied. It was teasing when I was growing up, and it's
Yeah.
bullying now, and it was bullying because it left scars, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Up until I left, and then it continued when I got there, because I was, a socially awkward kid, blah blah blah, and I'd come home crying a few days, and just really just had a miserable middle school, and then, well, 8, 9, and then 10, 11, 12. We had grade 13 at the time. I didn't actually start to feel even better until I got into university, because then I actually cared about what I was learning in a
Mm,
way. But yeah, the transition, awkward kid going to some big school with all these different people, and um like it was, I was thankful I had a small close group of friends,
yeah.
but yeah, it was a big change.
Sounds like it. And what do you think that you might have learned, from that time, in your life
Ugh.
that you carry with you today, I should say,
Yeah,
or maybe it's helped you?
I don't know. It wasn't like I had uh you know 80% good and 20% bad. Like, it
Sure.
wasn't like that. It was more like 50-50 or whatever. Like, there
Yeah.
was just wasn't a lot that really was encouraging.
Mm,
Now I'm looking at through a different lens. I'm looking at through the lens of myself today versus, if you asked me when I was 25, how did it feel when I was 13? I might
yeah.
have perspective. So, um, I mean, ultimately, we are who we are based on our experiences. So
Right.
I am who I am today. If I didn't go through that, I would probably be a different person. So
Mm,
it's hard to say. I mean, I survived it. I didn't have, um, I didn't have some of the more acute problems that, kids go through today.
right.
So I didn't have social media then, because that would have just been terrible.
Yeah,
um,
exactly. I mean, social media today is terrible. I got to say that my junior high experience, and I say it's a pivotal time. Maybe it wasn't a pivotal time for some people, but for me, it definitely was. I got into the bad crowd, in junior high and had a really hard time because my grades were failing. I was socially awkward as well too, and being kind of like in that situation. I always, because I had such a hard time when I got past that, and I was all of a sudden a goody two shoes and, I was getting good grades and everything in high school. And, was a, very good friend to people and everything. I wanted to go back, to the people in junior high, and I did tutor, for a while, people in junior high, but I really wanted to go back as a mentor, to them because I knew what a hard time that I had. But the older I got, and I did go into psychology in college, I wanted to maybe be a counselor or something. The older I got, the more I realized that they would not listen to me. You know what I mean? Because then all of a sudden I became like the old person trying to tell them, oh, what do I know? And all that kind of stuff. And I just realized like the older I got, the more that they wouldn't, take my advice or anything like that. And so I realized like that maybe that wasn't my calling, maybe it is like, people maybe my age or something like that, or, have been through or are trying to go through like, what I've been through or something. So I realized that is kind of just a funny, time for a lot of people, but it sounds like, oh, go ahead, please.
You have to be a certain age to be open to ideas.
Yes.
Because at a certain age, you think, oh, I know everything and I can do anything. And, the world is my oyster. So, I was just at a networking event last week through the American Marketing Association, their chapter in Toronto. And I've been to a few of them so far. And there was a lot of students there, a lot of like university or college students. And they're eager. They look at somebody who's been in the business for a while. They're like, they're like sponges. They're open to listening.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people I love talking to, because I can tell them not so much stories, but okay, here's what I learned. I'm going to try and pass along some, nuggets of wisdom so that you can avoid the mistakes I've made. Right. And that's all about, if you can help somebody eliminate a mistake, that eliminate mistakes that you've made and learn, and then you're pushing them up the learning curve, right? So I really enjoy that, because I know that I can make a positive impact in their life if they just listen to what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And you're right. Somebody in junior high, well, just thinking back and everything, I would have never listened to an adult. I didn't, at that time I was a punk, so I completely understand that. Anything that like else that you mentioned too, I don't want to push you into talking to anything, but is there, anything that else that you mentioned, helping your dad and, kind of the, I don't want to say that, struggle and everything. You said you a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old now. I mean, do they
21 and 23?
Oh, goodness me. I'm so sorry. But thank you for correcting me there.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not a lot more stressful than losing your spouse.
Yeah.
Especially when they were 5 and 7 at the time. So,
Oh,
um, I mean, but in some cases, at least for me, there wasn't a choice.
yeah.
Like, as much as I would love to crawl up in my bed and never come out, I had 2 kids to take care of.
Mm.
I was in a bereavement support group, and there was a single guy there. And he was like, I don't know how you go home to deal with that. And I'm like, I don't know how you deal with it. You go home and your home is like just empty, and it's a reminder of the person you lost.
Yeah.
I at least had something I had to keep busy with. So I think, and that's partly because of my upbringing. Like, I was just, resilient. Well, I had been through enough at that point. But I think if you have a bigger purpose, like I had to take care of them, there wasn't a choice.
Mm.
You find ways to cope and manage. And I think that's true of most stressors. If you had to go to work to pay your bills, and you had to work with a less than kind boss, let's say, like you do what you have to do. And it doesn't really deal with it, but it because it more pushes it sort of under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows you to cope and manage and continue moving forward. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing about that, because I can't imagine, I've never been through that myself. And, I just yeah, I definitely put out, a lot of empathy and everything, for that. Just or maybe sympathy, because I can't be totally empathetic, here, to that. But yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit kind of like what you do today and everything? And, I know that because you work off of gigs, right? And just, kind of, going out there and maybe some one-off, type of, gigs that you have and everything. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I like to think about it in terms, and it could be the same as any kind of service business. It's jobs are transactional, but clients are relational. So I'd
Yes.
rather have clients than jobs. So clients that I can work with for years. I don't want to have
Hmm.
to, you know, as you in the consulting business. I mean, you don't want to just do a project and then move on. You want to do project and then continue on with that client because
Hmm.
they do a good job and they fulfilled my needs and whatever. So my voiceover journey actually started when I was a kid. I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons, and I'd like to do some strange things with my voice. But I didn't do anything with it, right? I was just like some weird, wacky, probably ADHD kid, undiagnosed ADHD kid. Um, and never did anything with it, never took acting lessons or, drama club or nothing like that because I was too shy and too, had self I just, not great. So it was when 2016, I was downsized among other people at a company I was at, and my daughter was taking acting lessons because she was always like doing stuff, right, as young girls do.
Hmm.
uh, and the coach, the teacher says, hey, you've got a good, deep rich voice. Oh, actually, before that, I was in university and had a professor say, oh, you've got a good baritone voice, have you thought about doing radio, or
Mm.
you should consider doing radio? I'm like, okay, I'm 19 years old, I've never done anything. Okay, thanks. Moved to London, Ontario for a job. I still don't know how it happened, but I found a studio and went in, talked to the owners, like, hey, I like this, what's this voiceover stuff? I had no clue. Of course, I didn't do any research because, this is pre-internet too. He says, well, we mostly do corporate videos and we bring a gentleman in who went to Juilliard. I'm like, Juilliard, the most famous acting school in the world. Okay, bye. Like I hadn't even, like I said, hadn't even done a high school play, let alone, and back then, if you needed a voiceover for something, it was, union studio, was expensive and
Mm.
yada yada. So I went on with my life. This is like early 90s. Then fast forward to 2016, downsize, daughter's taking lessons. So I'm like, okay, voiceover. My buddy says, hey, what about that radio thing? I'm like, I don't know. So what do? Go home and Google voiceover. And thought, whoa, this is a whole industry and people doing it from home studios, and there's all these different genres and yada yada yada. I'm like, okay, well, I can either spend the next 6 months to a year looking for, a six-figure job that I'll be miserable at in a culture that I probably won't like, blah, 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 because that's
Mm.
my past experience. Or I can give this, this thing a shot. So I took my savings, took my severance, and started pushing the boulder up the hill. Found a local meetup group. Wonderful woman, Bev Standing, was at one of the groups, and she says, oh, you should take acting lessons and go take improv classes and blah blah blah. I'm like, okay. So I took some acting lessons from my daughter's acting coach and went through the whole Second City improv program. Started taking every voice acting class I could find in workshops. Excuse me. And then the following year, got professionally made demos and started attending conferences, voiceover conferences, and thought, well, what do I know? I know businesses. I don't have that strong acting background to go into like video games or
Mm.
or those animated series, because that you need really strong acting abilities.
Yeah.
Um, so I joined my local chamber of commerce and boards of trades and started attending, going to where my potential customers could be,
Mm.
and doing that for, well, outside the pandemic for 7 years, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And, um,
How did you, because you said that you couldn't do like drama and that, improv and everything like that in high school. How did you get over that? Because, that's a big leap, to go from, hey, I'm, like kind of the shy kid and everything and won't do that, and, maybe socially awkward to, geez, now I got to get out and do that, if this is what I want as my profession.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good question because it was almost like when I started to go down, when I decided I was going to go down that route, that to
Mm.
become a voice actor, um, these are the things that you need to do.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't really a choice. I didn't have like, ooh, I should. No, like, okay, I know I needed to learn more acting skills. I needed to release my inner monkey and do improv. because improv is very much about being in the moment. It's all about being in the moment. There's no rehearsing, there's no scheduling. It's just being in the moment to respond to. It's like playing tennis. You can't pre-think, okay, on this particular volley, I'm going to do this in advance. No, it's all happens in live real time. So I like I said, I didn't have a choice per se. I mean, I did obviously, but I didn't feel like I had a choice. Like I needed to do these. And standing up in front of a crowd at an improv class, well, the end of the third session, when they started to have these performances for family and friends, whatever, like standing on a stage with lights and everything else and going, okay, I don't like performing. I don't like the spotlight, and I'm on the stage with the spot. Like it was kind of nerve wracking, but it was kind of like the roller coaster. You tick, 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 tick. I'm terrible up to here. Once I'm going, I'm okay. Like I love the motion. So that's how it felt. Like the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was behind the curtain. That was terrifying. Once you got on the stage and things started to move and you got the first laugh, it's like, oh, okay.
There you go. You're in stride.
Right? Yeah. And I think that's true about most things in life. We amplify things like, oh, it's going to go bad. What's going to happen? Your boss calls you down to your office, whatever it may be. It's like, oh, and I used to always think, oh, well, what I do wrong. Doesn't matter if I did something wrong. It's like, I'd always think. And I think we make things bigger than they actually are. And
absolutely.
Like, oh, I was worried about that. What am I doing? Like,
Well, I know studying psychology, I mean, that's the fight or flight, but now they call it fight or flight or freeze, there. And it's so funny you bring up that analogy of the roller coaster, because that's exactly how I look at it too. I fear roller coasters. I don't like roller coasters, but once I get on a roller coaster and I do one roller coaster, I can do 10 more, because you get over that fear. It's like, it's the same thing with shots with me too. Like I fear that first, shot, but if you have like multiple shots or something like that, it's like, I'll bring them all on, at that point. But, because it's that buildup that you have, from it. And you can, before I present as well too, there's a lot of times I can feel that like ticking, like tick, 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 like you're going up the roller coaster. And then all of a sudden you get into it, and sometimes, just like a roller coaster too, you might have this like, after the big drop and everything, there might be like a twist and a turn that kind of like gets your heart going, again, but it kind of keeps you going, at that point. And then when it's over, it's like, oh my gosh, that relief, like it's over or something. But it's also that, Yeah, exactly. That excitement, like, let's do it again, or, something like that, that, you want again, if it didn't take all of the, take all the life out of you or something like that. But, it is funny because I do experience that, as well. And I think a lot of people might be surprised, but I am an introvert. I'm forced to be an extrovert. And I say I'm forced to be an extrovert. I force myself to be an extrovert because I am very socially awkward, and, if I completely, was not, was not my stage self, sometimes, in front of people, that I would probably be social, like, I don't know what to do with my hands all of a sudden. And, you start overthinking things, like when you're in front of people. But yeah, I thank you so much for sharing that, experience too of, like, what is that like? So
you mentioned the introvert because I am one as well. And I didn't realize I was until I saw Simon Sinek speak at a conference, and somebody asked him, "Hey, how do you've said you're a self-professed introvert, but yet you stand on stage and talk to thousands of people?"
Yeah.
He goes, well, public speaking is a learned skill.
Yeah.
Difference between introvert and extrovert, and once I heard this, I'm like mind blown that I understood why I did why I felt what I felt when I was out doing networking events and stuff.
Right.
So an introvert wakes up in the morning with a wallet with 5 coins. Each social interaction, he gives up a coin. When his wallet's empty, he needs to be by himself to recharge and get his energy back.
Yes.
An extrovert wakes up with an empty wallet.
Yeah.
Every social interaction, they add a coin. At the end of the day, the more coins they have, the more energy they feel, like the more satisfied they feel. Basically, it's introvert extrovert is more about how you get your energy. If social interactions drain your energy, then you're an introvert. If social interactions give you energy, then you're an extrovert. And it wasn't until I heard that, like, oh, so that day that I had 3 network, I had like a lunch thing, and then I had 2 at night. By the middle of the second one, I was like, oh, I could go home. I just, I don't want to be, I was at some kind of bar or whatever. And then the next one after that, I was like, why am I here? And I felt bad. Or you go to any kind of social gathering and there's like 100 people, and you talk to one person, 2 people, and you feel bad, like, you're standing by the drink bar or the food snack table, or you're like a wallflower.
Yep.
I always felt bad. I always felt like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I heard that, oh,
Yes.
it's my energy. I just don't, there is some social awkwardness, but it's just, it drains me to have conversation. Now, I enjoy them.
Right.
I can only have so many before I'm done. Like, I just, okay, I leave me alone. I sit in the corner or whatever, go home early, whatever. That's fine for me. I'd rather be alone to recharge than to like stand there and talk to more and more people.
Yep.
The louder that's a separate layer onto that.
Yeah, that's
It's a
true.
loud venue, like I can't even hear the person talking, and it's my ears have it almost sounds like a cacophony of just that's loudness. So
yes.
But yeah, but I think that boils down to self-awareness, or you're aware of why you're feeling a certain way. Like, are you scared of the roller coaster because you're worried about falling out, or is just the anticipation, and that anticipation excitement wrapped around anxiety?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've heard that expression before, where anxiety is a lot of times, like, public speaking, whatever, it's just excitement, but it's wrapped around in this sort of negative connotation. So
yeah. I love that, because, the thing is, I always tell, like, my team members and everything, I always tell them, are you gonna, grab onto the railing or something like that on the roller coaster and go, like that all the way through? Or are you gonna put your hands up and go,
yeah,
like, and so it's those, kind of things that you really want them, to think about, like, how are they going to kind of approach that situation? And I feel you, on that too. Like, when I have a lot of networking events, like, I'm getting ready to go to an all-day conference on October 5th, and I'm going to be there from 7 a.m. and then there's a happy hour afterwards. And I'm like, I know that I have a finite amount of coins, if you will, in my wallet, and I'm like, I'm going to really have to kind of parcel them out, go take those bathroom breaks and everything, and just like walk down the hall real quick by yourself, and, kind of get that, where you're feeling like you can recharge, a little bit, just to be able to give. Because I know when I go to networking events, and somebody told me this one time, they said that always going in with a purpose. And I never thought about like a purpose. I just went in there and, like, who am I going to meet? That sort of thing. But like for mine, for networking events or conferences or, whatever you're doing, it's that, like, where you have to for as an introvert, you have to intentionally set that I'm going to meet people. I'm going to talk to people, or else I will sit in the corner by myself and just like observe people, instead, and typically that's how I'd really want to do it. But you have to, like, why are you there? You're there to be able to interact with other people and learn and, grow and everything, so.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to have that. One of the primary goals is to talk to somebody within the first 5 minutes,
Right.
because that will immediately block, even if it's somebody, especially if it's somebody, that's easier. But somebody you don't know, the more uncomfortable you can put yourself in. What would be the most uncomfortable thing to do in this event, right? Okay, walking up to a stranger and just, hi, I'm
Yeah.
where are you from? What's your name? Where are you from? That kind of thing.
Yes.
But then also, sitting on a sofa section, near where everyone's walking around. So you're there, but you're not, you're not closeted off in some other, some private room somewhere alone. You're sort of your own little space. And if somebody else is sort of the same way as you, they'll sit down. The next thing you know, you're having a conversation or finding finding some commonalities, whether or not it's something that they're wearing or something they talk about, or a tag on their bag or something like,
Mm.
oh, there's something. It's a lot easier to start a conversation like that than to like just walk up blindly to somebody at a conference or whatnot. But
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I always ask the question of like, what are you most excited about, for this event, or what are you hoping to get out of this event? Kind of getting their perspective, because like, how did they prepare, for it?
yeah,
Their expectations too. I'm
yeah,
curious to know, because I have my perspective and I want to know their perspective,
sure.
on it too. Like, how are they viewing it? So it's good. But well, David, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being, here. And how can people find you on the web?
Anytime at davidgilbertvoiceover.com, nice and easy. Email David at davidgilbertvoiceover.com. And also LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
So
definitely put all of that in the show notes so everybody knows how to get a hold of you. And let's take a break.
And now, the funniest thing that happened. Take a break from your stress to listen to a funny or unbelievable story. Okay, that's my poor attempt to be David Gilbert. But actually, David, go ahead and take it away.
So I don't know if this is funny. It's probably funny for other people. Wasn't so funny for me at the time, but I was at a trade show many years ago in Chicago. I was working for a company. I was a buyer, and went out to one of these, big fancy corporate shindigs with lots of people, food, and free open bar. So they love to pour really strong drinks in Chicago. And the bar line was so long, I thought, okay, I'll just grab two at a time. So I did that. And I did it again, and probably again, and probably again. So I had a lot of gin and tonics that night. Fast forward, got home, got to my hotel safely. Um, the next waking moment I had was I was on another floor of the hotel, somewhere near elevators, just wearing my underwear in a hotel somewhere. Somehow I was able to use a freight elevator, go down a floor, and all this sort of. So I left my room, found an elevator, went down the elevator to another floor, and somehow I did that without even knowing. So I'm like, I have nothing. I'm just me in my underwear. So I get back to my floor, and thankfully nobody was around. I don't know what time it was. And this is a big hotel in Chicago. So I find the hotel lobby, those lobby phones, near the hotel, the elevators, and I ring the front desk and say, "Hi, I've locked myself out of my room. It's room number whatever." And so I go back to my door, and I'm like, anxiously like covering myself and whatnot. And then this big burly security guard comes up and "This is my room. This is my room. I can show you. So he lets me in. I go to my room. I get my photo ID or whatever. It's like, here it is. And so grateful that I got in. And of course, I'm like naked almost. And he leaves me and fine. I'm sure he probably was laughing his head off when he got back to the security office, closed the door, threw the chair in front of the door, and went to bed. And so I some kind of blockage, so I couldn't open the door again and do that. So that was my funny moment.
Thanks for listening to the Stress Mess podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And don't forget to tell a friend. The song for this podcast is Traveler by the talented Christian Weigand, and voiceover work by David Gilbert. You can find more information about those two in the show notes. If you'd like to work with me, head on over to SamanthaElizabeth.com to book a free intro session. This has been a Be Who You Need to Be production.